So we'll take it to our next question, which is what are common mistakes that you think startups are doing, founders are doing when they're looking for an exit, and can they avoid those mistakes? Maybe Piyush, you want to start?
There aren't really many mistakes when it's a good exit. There's a process, everyone is keen to close the deal, both the buyer and the seller. If it's an IPO, everyone's keen to close the deal, the banker and the seller. So good exits, very few things can go wrong. When it comes to middling exits, when you're sort of getting acquired for, let's say, a $50 million, and the company's raised, let's say, $20 million, and it's below the last round valuation, then treating the exit not as a sales process where a lot of cogs need to be set in motion, you need to go sell to multiple entities within the organization that's buying, not creating options, not putting pressure on the deal, are some of the more common things that founders tend to do. And VCs also fall in the same trap, and it's because we don't do this day in and day out. But to not think of an exit as a sales motion is probably the biggest mistakes that end up getting done in the sales in the exit process. You have to think about it as a pipeline. Have you reached the engineering team? Have you reached the product team? Has sort of the GTM team bought into our ideas? Is the product alignment done? Is the CEO on track of the acquirer, etc.? So some of these things are super important to manage the process.
Founders are operators. The good founders are operators. They're not supposed to be great deal makers, and they're not often, right? And I think the sooner you realize that you're not up for the task alone, you need to get the right help. It could be somebody from the board, it could be a banker, it could be just a good lawyer that is more of a business-oriented guy. That can drive a lot. A lot of it is like how you set the goal, what expectations, right? How you deliver those expectations to the acquirer. I think a lot of it is like it's a very different motion than what you used to do. So that's when I think the point that I felt that in many of the good outcomes, those that we felt we actually realized the true value of the company is that there was a good structure in place. The other thing is like just have a second bidder, right? It's always kind of it's obvious, but in most cases you don't get to do it. By the way, a lot of the cases is actually because the bankers just don't want to do the extra work, and it's your job to push them to do that, right? You already have the buyer. By the way, you usually bring the banker once you have this buyer, so the banker doesn't really have a motivation to go and work, too hard for that, right? So I think that's a second mistake. Make sure that there's alignment with the banker to bring this second bidder. Make sure there's a competitive bid, right? That's a huge difference in the outcome. It could be, by the way, could be 20-30% of the value, which is huge.
Founders make a lot of mistakes in terms of targeting the wrong person a lot of the time. They focus on the corp dev department, they focus on the person who's business development versus the person who's on the engineering team or on the product team or the GM of a business or the CEO of that business. Like those are the people who are going to drive M&A decisions. And so much of the time you get caught up focusing on, whatever M&A corp dev team is at this organization. They're the execution folks. Those are the people who are not going to spend as much time understanding why there is value to your business. And so it's why it's important also to, as we talked about earlier, go early, right? Spend time with those people, right? It's not something where you're going to meet someone and a month later, the CEO is excited to buy the company. It's, you're spending time with them on a strategic partnership or something. And 6 months later, they say, it's kind of the inception of M&A, right? It's, they come to the conclusion that they want to buy you, right? Not that you told them that they should buy you, right? And I think the last thing, maybe to Aviad's point, is just urgency, right? Whether it's a second bidder or you convince, another founder that they need your product tomorrow, right? Similar to Piyush's point, it's like a good sales motion, right? Like where you can create urgency, that's how you get people to buy you and buy you today and pay up for that, right? And so I think that's, kind of the critical component to it, that a lot of founders don't really think about how to create that urgency in an M&A process like they do in a sales process.
Yeah.